Alrighty, episode 8 of AtlantaCast. This one is episode The Club. That's what it's called. That's what we're going with. So, as always, at the beginning of these, I always like to give you guys the spiel. We have a Patreon, $5 tier. That'll get you access to a shout out from us at the end of each episode. $10 tier, that'll get you access to 2 weeks ahead of the schedule. We've been uploading these episodes 2 weeks ahead. So you can be listening to episode 10. You could be done with season 1 right now if you're listening to this on YouTube. And then, of course, the $15 tier, that will grant you access to bonus episodes where we cover other Donald Glover type related media. It's a fun time. But today we're tackling the episode The Club of Atlanta. And Dad, you want to get us started with a
opening scene, the guys, as I'll refer to them, meaning the three main characters, Darius, Al, and Ern, are in the club with a bottle of cheap champagne. Al's looking to get paid for a club appearance, but he expresses suspicion that the Nigerian club owner might not actually come through and pay him because he doesn't trust Nigerians, which Ern immediately points out that Darius is Nigerian, and this seems to confuse Al. This is kind of odd because I would have assumed at this point that Al kind of knew a little bit about Darius and the fact that he's Nigerian. In fact, I think he's mentioned it before in his presence.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought in episode 1 Darius had said something about getting his balls crushed in Nigeria. Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe he didn't mention that he's from there, or who really knows? But yeah, this is an interesting little bit here that I feel like I've already kind of gone over what's interesting about it and how, like, you know, the distinction is made between someone who, like, an African American and a Nigerian. But different in this particular scene, I think, is the fact that, like, all the characters kind of treat it as just like offhand, like they're just like as soon as Al learns that that Darius is Nigerian, he's just kind of like, oh, the crazy, and that's kind of just like the end of it. Like, they don't really treat it as this huge racist, like, stereotype or something that Al is doing or is, you know, expecting of Nigerians.
It does make you wonder if there's if that's an actual sentiment within the Black community at large.
Right? Yeah. Like, I don't like. I feel like this is a situation where I feel like
is that just
I do not know if it's kind of if, you know, as an audience, we're sort of meant to think like that it's not really that big a deal, that, like, you know, like
gloss over
the ultimate situation is just that, like, Al now knows that Darius is Nigerian, so in the future he's probably not going to make, like, Nigerian racist comments towards him. So and they're you know, they're still plenty good friends, so it's not like this particularly damaged their relationship or anything. But then I guess you could also look at it as, like, you know, perhaps, like, Al should be more like because his friend, like, he doesn't know that his friend isn't Nigerian or whatever, he should be a little more aware of what he's assuming about his friends or something like that. Like, I don't really know. I think
little inkling that of Al's relative ignorance. And it's also, I think, probably more directly related to previous episodes. It's another example of some sort of identity confusion, and that's just a recurring thing that just comes up again and again. And, you know, we talked about it in previous episodes as well.
Yeah. But and I do think that this show has kind of like I will say that, like, you know, later on, I won't specify exactly, but later on in the series, like, similar events like this happen where you know, like another like minority kind of like makes a point to, like, stereotype Darius or, you know, or like Black people, and it's not like treated as like a super big deal. There's kind of like an impression that everybody who's having the conversation is like equally aware that, like, you know, like, race stereotypes are like overall a negative, but, like, that doesn't mean that you have to, like, be super upset about them all the time. Like, I get that vibe coming off from the show. And I'll point it out when I'll point it out when it happens, because it's way later down the line. But
all right, well, and the Al in this scene, Al is definitely annoyed that he's in sort of the second tier VIP area, and that there's
Hmm.
this other rapper named Marcus Miles who's in the house, and he has the larger,
Yeah.
more important section of the club, and he has a
Yeah, I
larger
looked up
entourage.
Marcus Miles on on like Google, and I think there is like an athlete named Marcus Miles,
Yeah,
but he didn't
yeah.
seem to be like connected to the show in any way. There is a real Instagram account of this character.
Oh, really?
Uh yeah, yeah, which there's also happens to be a Instagram account for Zan, which is kind of funny. Kind of bleed it, which is another thing that this show does, where they like bleed the characters into reality, because they're using like real life apps. Like some shows will be like, oh, you got to upload that to BitTube or something like that, or like obviously just like a social media or like an Instagram like stand-in, but for some reason they just don't want to say the actual name. I don't know if that means they'd have to like pay royalties to that
I would
uh
describe it as the opposite. They're
company.
actually blurring the reality of whatever social media
Yeah,
platform
well,
they're using.
I just mean like I think it's kind of an extra step that
Yeah,
Atlanta will sometimes take to
no,
like
it
make
makes
the
sense.
show
Make it
like
more
more
popular.
clearly a commentary on like real life social stuff.
Hmm.
And in this case, like the Marcus Miles, like the only things that are on this Instagram page are just pictures of his invisible car.
Yeah, so that's actually like a funny line that that Darius offers up. But before that, there's a fan that approaches Paperboy, and he recognizes him, and he starts reciting Paperboy's lyrics, which Al is uncomfortable with this kind of attention, and it seems a little creepy until
Mm,
he breaks into like this falsetto at the end of the lyrics, which then it kind of becomes comical. Um, but this is kind of another example of Al being uncomfortable with his celebrity, which it's a contradiction because he's there to promote himself. He's using sort of the rap uh, community and the gangster image to promote himself, but at the same time
yeah.
he's uncomfortable with it. And
Yeah, this I think is a more clear like this episode I think takes a more clear like it's simultaneously a criticism of like the industry that Al is getting into, but also kind of a criticism of Al himself for like trying to get something out of it that he's clearly not going to get, which is, like he's trying to party with girls, and by the end of the episode, like a couple of the girls that were hanging around in his booth are like, "All right, well, see ya." And he's like, "What? You're not going to give me your phone number?" And she's like, "Oh, well, we had a good time. Isn't that
yeah,
what you tried to do?" And it becomes apparent that Al was trying to get something more out of the interaction, which, he doesn't end up getting.
yeah,
So he's trying to get the attention of certain types of people, and he very much does not want the attention of other types of people. And the thing is that as a public figure, you're going to get attention from everybody. And so he, is kind of currently in a stage of not really being able to accept that,
right.
or maybe not realizing that that's the reality of the situation.
Did you analyze the lyrics that the guy was reciting at all?
No.
I don't know if there's anything to be made of it other than it there. I mean, there's some vulgarity in there. There's more like references to like sex and his penis. I got this long thing in your face like Dikembe. Dikembe is a reference to this 7 foot four African basketball player,
Yeah.
but he's referencing some sort of oral sex or something in the song. But there's also some lyrics in there that uh, make reference to him running these streets looking for the real one, looking out for the real one. I don't know if the audience is meant to hear these lyrics clearly, but like it gives you some insight into the paperboy whatever creative
I mean, the other thing is we
writing
know
he's
his
doing.
attitude towards like all of like the rap game, where because like in the last episode he had that woman on TV like try to analyze a couple of his lyrics, and he was like, nah, there's really no deeper meaning. There's no like extra layer. He's said multiple times like, "Man, I'm just rapping. Like I'm just doing what I do to get paid, right?" And I think
Yeah, I think this is also a contradiction. The character, it's exactly the scene you're referring to from the previous episode where somebody recites his own words and then he rejects them as not significant in some way. Whereas, he's looking for celebrity, he's looking for people to buy his music, but he doesn't want to be responsible for how people might want to interpret it. I mean, that's kind of the critical look that like this is kind of what I remember uh, people of my age criticizing rap lyrics as being too vulgar or too demeaning towards women because it's right there in the lyrics. These are mostly black men that are reciting these
I mean,
degrading lyrics.
in the specific example you're giving, it wasn't a demeaning towards women lyric. It was a pro-sexual spectrum lyric, or
In the
what the
previous
woman was
episode,
claiming to be a pro-sexual spectrum lyric, which I think
oh yeah,
anybody like in this situation, like I get what you're saying.
that
In
was a
that particular situation,
misinterpretation.
the meaning of pro-sexual spectrum was clearly not there,
Yeah,
and she was like
trying to
overreaching
put
and
it
try to
there,
read something into his lyrics that wasn't there at all.
and that's why I bring
Um,
it up here
but when
because
it comes to the example, if you're talking about like, I don't know if we've seen examples of Al's lyrics that are like, I mean, again, I guess I wasn't really paying too close attention to what this guy in this episode was reciting to Al, but if that's
yeah,
a
it was definitely
if
both
people are
vulgar and
criticizing Al on the basis of being like misogynistic and transphobic or something based on what he says in his lyrics and it's supported by the lyrics, then I mean, yeah, I would say
this one was,
we
yeah,
had a whole discussion about this last
yeah,
episode.
yeah. And I mean, I don't know, like the creators of Atlanta put this in. I don't. Maybe this is lyrics from a real song. I don't know, but I
I
mean,
don't think.
there might have been a little Easter egg in there that sort of was supposed to tell you something about Al's backstory because there's also the
Oh yeah,
the
maybe.
guys the guy that was reciting this lyrics. He was saying, "I've." One of the lines was, "I've been running these streets looking out for the real one." It sounded to me like a reference to his like family abandoning him, maybe, or he felt like he had to survive on his own. But again, it was mixed with these sort of demeaning lyrics towards women, which it didn't make sense in that regards. But anyway, I think I maybe overanalyzed that. But you can go back and listen to what the guy's saying, uh, if that's really his lyrics. It's interesting that they never have Paperboy actually perform. It may be that
Yeah,
the character, uh, what's his name, Brian Tyree,
I
uh,
think so.
Henry Brian. What I'm butchering his name, but I don't think he's really a skilled rapper himself. So maybe that's just why you never see Paperboy actually on stage performing. Uh, but anyway, we get a little insight into
Maybe.
his lyrics here. But okay, moving on. The DJ in the club announces Marcus Miles is in the house, and the crowd like goes wild. They cheer, and then he also announces Paperboy's in the house, and you just hear like a smattering of applause, which turns off Paperboy again. He's kind of like, what about me? Since I thought in reality what you would do if you're the DJ is you announce the lesser of the two people first, and then you announce Marcus like as the headliner. But anyway, this is a little snub in at Paperboy. Like he's not quite at the level of this other guy yet. Then we see Ern walking through a smelly crowd of people dancing. It's kind of funny. Ern
Does he
actually,
specify that they're smelly?
well, he makes a comment like somebody here smells like a Wendy's double stack.
Oh.
Yeah, that you don't you have a hard time hearing it unless you have the subtitles turned on. You can't really make out what's being said because there's so much noise in the club. But Ern is looking for the club owner, who's this sort of sleazy guy, black guy, but Earn wants to follow up on when they're going to get paid, but this club owner kind of disappears into the crowd, and he at first he says, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll take care of you. Just follow me to the back room." But then he kind of gives him the slip, and
Mm.
he's clearly you clearly see that he's avoiding Earn. And I would also point out here, because I turned the subtitles on here in order to hear what they were saying.
I've had subtitles on this entire time, but yeah.
We also hear or see the lyrics of the song that's playing in the background. There's some rap music going on while these guys are talking on the dance floor, and the song is called "We in the City." And again, it just struck me that, like, the lyrics are about hoes and guns and drugs, just stereotypical perhaps, but not particularly something that has a lot of positive social value, at least in my opinion. I guess they're supposed to be recounting what it's really like in the city, but it's just also is kind of in line with what we just heard this guy reciting in the form of Paperboy's lyrics.
Yeah.
So that might just be an old white guy talking, but I think the creators of Atlanta are criticizing this culture, and it becomes more clear as we move on. Uh, the characters themselves like really voice it. So we cut back to Darius and Al. Al is still like sort of disgruntled. Darius is trying to cheer him up to say, "Hey, like let's have some fun." Um, Al is jealous of this Marcus guy. In fact, this is right where he says, "Fuck the club." Like he doesn't
Yeah.
like that. I think it's primarily because of this jealousy thing. Um, and then this is where, for no obvious reason, Darius points out that Marcus has an invisible car, which is
Well, he just says like, yeah, that guy's cool, he's got an invisible car. He just like it's just a neat fun fact about this guy.
yeah, which is sort of mildly funny, but like a lot of the things that Darius says just make me laugh like hard. But this was like, well, this almost felt so like out of place in the dialogue that it was like, wow, this is just weird, really weird thing to say. But he pulls his phone out, shows him a picture of somebody apparently leaning on a visible car, and Darius in trying to cheer Al up, he points out this girl who apparently has been looking over at Al and say, "Hey, let's call this girl over." And Al stands up and he shouts out an invitation to everybody around him to come join him in this VIP area, and he's going to buy a bottle. Um,
Hmm.
and then and then back to Darius, who uh, gets up. Apparently, he's gonna go leave the VIP area for to get a drink or whatever. But he walks by a bouncer, and he has a question for the bouncer, which is, "Have you ever
You
had
ever
to
had to
throw
throw out
out
another
another
bouncer?
bouncer?"
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, it was tough. He knew all the moves.
Yeah, another mildly funny line from Darius, which at first again made me think, what is this about? But we do get a little bit of a payoff on that, because he has to come back when he leaves the
Hmm.
VIP area, and then when he returns, the bouncer won't let him pass because Darius doesn't have the right wristband, and there's an exchange like with the bouncer, like, which color wristband do I have? And Darius objects. He's like, "This is meaningless," and he just leaves.
Yeah, I was gonna say this decision on Darius's part, as we later figure out that he just decides to go back to the apartment and just like eat cereal and play some video games, and
Yeah,
like I think that's kind of highlights it's a Darius thing to do. It's kind of funny. But it's also kind of like Darius. It kind of highlights like that Darius is not the type to like push conflict where it's clearly not going to work out in his favor. Like regardless of whether or not he like deserved to get back in that section. Like if this was Al Al would have like done something to like he probably would have gone and like spoken to a manager or he
Or
would have
just
gotten
forced his way
more
in.
insistent that he deserves to be in there or he would have started making a scene or something like that. Whereas Darius is content to just be like, you know what, this situation is not going to work out in my favor, so I'm just gonna exit. And I think that like I think that that is what allows Darius to be so like easygoing and not like get in danger a lot of the time. Where like Al is the one who is a suspected like in the first episode, Al is the type to like approach the guy who just kicked off his window or his
Side view mirror.
side view rear view mirror or side view mirror and that ends up like getting him landed in jail and whereas like Darius is definitely the type to you know not try to instigate conflict in that way and sometimes that kind of behavior can also be abused by people who are just who like seeking to take advantage of somebody who isn't going to like stand up for themselves. But I think overall the show is kind of like giving like that's kind of what gives Darius this air of like mysticism where like he knows all or seems to like never make a wrong move is because to him like they're just like it's really obvious when like a situation is not going to pan out in his favor
I
and
think
he's like doesn't dwell on that.
I think what we're also seeing here from the creators is like the little intimate details of club culture. You know, this VIP thing that is meant to attract celebrities or maybe local musicians to come to expose themselves to the people in the crowd, and then the crowd being attracted to the fact that there's a celebrity there. But then there's these little subcultural things like how do you get into the VIP area? You have to pass this bouncer, and then these bracelets or these wrist things become like currency. If you have one, that gets you into this thing, and I think that's what the creators are doing here is they're kind of taking a deep dive into this club culture, and how does it really work, and who benefits from it, who likes it, who doesn't like it. And this is part of it. This little.
I guess. I think this is a situation that has panned out in a lot of like club episodes of shows in the past. I think that like it's an interaction that you can read more into given the conversation that Ern has with the bartender later on. I guess,
Yeah, we'll get
but
to
I think
that.
that's
So
where the meat of the club culture analysis comes from.
Ern, after Darius leaves, we see Ern trying to track down the club owner. He finally corners him in the bathroom, and the club owner is still kind of like laughing. Oh, where you been? Doesn't really admit to like trying to avoid Ern, but uh, they Ern follows him out to the bar. They get a drink. Uh, he offers him a shot, and Ern's like, I hate shots. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
he gets a expensive drink anyway. And in the process of him like taking a few sips of a drink, the club owner slips through a hidden door
Yeah.
while Ern is looking down. It's just like a silly like door that just turns around, and he's gone. The guy's giving him the slip again. Ern's frustrated at the bar, and then he initiates this conversation with the bartender, a female woman. Female woman. I guess maybe that is appropriate, but and Ern she offers him a shot as well, and Ern is again, I hate shots, and then he adds, I hate the club, and this is pointless. So again, this is the second time one of the main characters has thrown this out there. So I think the creators are pointing out at least the two main characters, they don't like this club culture, and it seems like a more obvious
I don't
criticism.
think any of the three main characters like this club culture.
Well, Darius at least was trying to have a good time before he
Oh, I
he
thought you were
got
talking
excluded.
about. Oh, yeah, whatever.
Um, so the female bartender says she recognizes that Ern isn't the quote usual type that. So this kind of intrigues Ern that they end up having a little exchange. And Ern is like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, like that guy over there." You see this shirtless guy, like who looks
Yeah.
disoriented, and he's rubbing his nipples, which made me laugh. I thought that was the funniest little clip in the episode up to this point. That she was just pointing out this random guy in a bar who seemed like he was drunk or high or on some sort of drugs. She explains that some club culture involving VIP access. She kind of this is part of my comment from before because she's kind of uh, explaining to Earn that these wristbands carry a certain currency with the ladies. That if you have these wristbands and you can approach the women with them to say, hey, I can get you into the VIP area. So again, I don't think there's any significance to that other than this is just how the clubs work. I don't know. I don't know that that's specific to rap clubs or anything, but again, it's just an insight into the club culture. So now Ern is sitting there drinking. He appears to be getting drunk. He's starting to look a little wobbly, and he's engaged with in a conversation with the bartender, and he's kind of like analyzing her. At one point, he says, "Wow, you were a Marxist until you got sexist," because the woman was commenting on these women in this exchange with the wristbands. I
Yeah.
think there's a couple lines like that come out of Ern's character, which I think are meant to suggest that he's pretty intelligent. Like, just throw out the word Marxist. Like, I don't think it really even fits in that dialogue. But uh, he, I'll come back to this in a moment because he makes reference to a Greek
Yeah.
character as well. But so Ern asks the bartender to sort of analyze him. He says, "Why am I here?" Because this woman is looking out at the audience or out at the patrons in the club and sort of analyzing them. And so Ern wants to know why she thinks he's there, and she says, "Well, you're the same as everybody else. You're here to feel good about yourself and to stunt," which I think that means to show off or to sort of present yourself in some positive way. Ern says, "No, you're wrong. I'm here for work." But the bartender says that there's no distinction, that Ern is really putting on an act like, "Oh, I came here to handle business like a boss," I think is what she's saying. So she's kind of like getting under his skin a little bit. But Ern,
Hmm.
Ern seems too drunk to really defend himself or to explain. So he just asks for the check. And here's where he refers to her as Tiresias, and I don't know if you looked that up. Do you
No.
know who Tiresias is or was?
I know the name.
So in Greek mythology, Tiresias was a blind prophet of Apollo in Thebes, which is in Greece, uh, famous for clairvoyance and for being transformed into a woman for 7 years.
Hmm.
So this is kind of a bizarre reference. I don't think Ern is suggesting this person is like trans or something, but again, it's like just another sort of uh, intelligent comment. He's comparing the bartender to Tiresias, this prophet. Like she knows. I think he's saying it sort of ironically or sort of I don't know, like,
Tongue in cheek.
yeah, yeah. I think that's what he's doing. But I don't know how the audience is supposed to know who Tiresias is. Seems like just again pointing to the fact that Ern is you know
I
college
guess they just
educated.
have to be massive intellectuals.
Yeah. So anyway, she gives him the check, and on the back of the check, she writes the word "fire alarm" on the back.
Yeah.
And Ern looks a little confused, but he turns around and looks at the wall where the guy disappeared into. He sees a fire alarm there, and he's like he figures it out that she's given him a clue as to how to get through this secret door.
Hmm.
And so he goes and pulls the fire alarm, and sure enough, the door opens, and he slides through. Uh, so then we cut to Al, who's making small talk with uh, this woman who I think her name was Janice, and he tries to get the attention of a nearby cameraman to get his picture taken with
Hmm.
Janice, but the guy sort of snubs him. He's like not particularly interested. Ends up taking a picture of his shoes for some reason. Uh,
Oh, I didn't catch that.
yeah, so again, Al is kind of like pissed that he's not getting the attention that he thinks he deserves. Janice is telling a story about a bad experience with a guy in a car. A guy, I don't know if it was her boyfriend or a date that she had, and she was in a car and he ended up calling a cop. I think this is all just small talk. Another guy enters the picture, an unknown guy. Al tries to kind of shoo him away, rebuff him. Al looks around and realizes that he's surrounded by strangers, and he doesn't know the guy who's trying to make conversation with him, and he doesn't, in
Yeah.
fact, know anybody who's sitting around him. And he just kind of snaps and he stands up and he tells all you N words, get the F out of my section. So he's kind of like he's kind of going back and forth. He's not handling his own emotions very well, like because like just the previous scene before, he's like standing up shouting for everybody to come and drink with him, and now he's telling everybody to get the F out of my section.
Well, right, yeah. Like I think that gets back to what I was talking about earlier, where Al is expecting a certain type of attention and attention from a certain type of person, and it's not just like beautiful women that he's hoping to get attention from. It's also like producers and people
Yeah.
who he respects, and people who can take pictures of him that he can then post online to like further his brand and that kind of thing. He's not interested in people who he sees as like having no real value to him. Those being like rappers who, and this happens a lot of the time throughout the show, is people who also are trying to like get known in the game, and they're like, oh, you're Paperboy. Oh, hey, you can play me on a track, right? Like we can, like you'll totally like put me on one, and that annoys him because like that's he doesn't see that as benefiting him in any real way. Whereas he obviously does see benefit in getting attention from women and from photographers and from probably more famous artists, that kind of thing. And so, but the thing is that you realistically, when you're in the field, you're going to get attention from everybody, and you can't really control how other people, to an extent, you can't really control how other people are going to approach you and who's going to approach you and that kind of thing. And I think this is the episode where he's kind of like, he's going through the stage of like realizing that fame is not what he wants it to be. I think that's a big part of his arc in this first season.
Yeah,
Is
definitely.
he's seen hints of it in the past and how people react to his music, and now people are sort of approaching him firsthand while he's trying to receive a different kind of attention, and it's just like not really working out for him.
And I think this is at least in part. I don't think in general Paperboy's character is autobiographical of Donald
No, I
Glover,
don't
but I
think
think
so.
this experience that you're describing right now probably comes straight out of Donald Glover's head, like his experience
I wouldn't be
in the rap
surprised if this
world.
was. Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if this seems like a very realistic struggle uh to go through
Yeah.
for a lot of people who get into the rap game.
Okay, so the DJ, like, so everybody's getting up to leave the VIP area, but Al then realizes what he's done because he's basically encouraged the women to
Yeah,
leave,
yeah,
sort of
exactly. Like he's
unknowingly.
talking, yeah, like he's talking to the men. He wants them to go away, but he doesn't realize that he's talking to everybody. Like
So there, the women
you know,
get up to leave too, but he's like, "Oh no, come back!" But
yeah, he
then we're
doesn't quite
interrupted.
get that he can't have it both ways yet.
Yeah. So then the DJ, then we cut and we see the DJ making an announcement that the club has been purchased by Marcus Miles. Like apparently the entire club has changed ownership just in this short period of time, and
Hmm.
uh, he's Marcus is leaving the club, and apparently he's taking all the liquor with him, or it seems like the party is over at this point, and people are like concerned about whether or not they're going to be served liquor anymore. Uh, So then that scene is over, and we cut back to Ern, who's stumbling into the club owner's office. Like he's obviously drunk at this point, uh, and he finds the club owner in his office, and he's about to confront him, but then he just pukes on the floor. Like he's
Right.
apparently that drunk, and he pukes, and then he just like says, "I want my $5,000."
Yeah.
Apparently, this is what
And by the
what
way,
he.
I'll say that I think the fact that Ern doesn't like shots is just kind of like a metaphor for for his intolerance for the club as a whole.
Yeah,
Like he
yeah,
can't stomach the club for so long without getting sick, like metaphorically, like literally he can't stomach his alcohol. And and later he says like, "Oh, guys can tell I drink juice."
yeah.
So
Good
he's
point.
not and he's the character who most often like turns down is who is most often offered like weed and says like no, not right now, you know
Yeah,
like he's not unwilling, like he will, like he does smoke weed
and he
on multiple
drinks,
occasions, but like there, yeah, and he drinks,
but
but
he
like
can't hold it. He can't hold his
yeah,
liquor.
yeah, but he's more pulled back than some of the other characters.
Yeah, and so he confronts the owner, but the owner, who's not particularly threatened by Ern, becomes somewhat hostile. Now he's kind of drops the act of, oh yeah,
Hmm.
follow me into the back kind of thing. But he's now in his office, and the club owner starts making claims that there were additional expenses that he doesn't owe him $5,000, and he only
Hmm.
gives him $750. Ern doesn't really put up much of a fight. He just takes the $750, and the club owner tells Ern to get the fuck out of my office before I get the heater, which I assume means a gun. And Ern just sort of uh, walks out with the
Hmm.
$750. So this is I think I said this in episode 1 or 2 that Ern's character is weaker than Paperboy. Paperboy, he's got this gangster image, but he actually is able and willing to stand up for himself. This is another example of maybe he should have made a bigger deal out of it, but he just takes the 750 and he leaves. Al Al calls, and then we cut back to Al, who, the club is starting to clear out. Al calls Darius on the phone and finds out that he's back at the apartment playing video games. And oh, I made a note here to see if you picked up on
Yeah.
this. Did you see the video, the monitor? Uh, it was just a very short segment, but there was some weird name of the video game that Darius referenced. And
Oh,
then
I didn't see.
if you if you see the actual screen, it's a monkey like jumping around like a little
Oh,
chimpanzee.
wait, is it Monkey Ball?
No, I didn't recognize it. I think it was a made up video game name, but I just thought it was kind of like weirdly racist that
uh
he's being a monkey on this video game.
I
Anyway,
mean, if it's okay, well, I mean, if it's if it's like, if it was a monkey and a ball like
mm,
running around, that was Monkey Ball, Super Monkey Ball, which is a real game.
yeah, maybe it was it actually was the game.
I've seen
That's
a
not
lot of
the
I've seen a lot of
title
games
that
where
he
monkeys are the
dropped.
main character. The monkey, you play as a monkey.
All right, I will. Yeah. Anyway, so Janice, the woman that Al was talking to, gets up to leave. Al calls out to stop her, tries to get her contact info, and this is where you were saying Janice is kind of just giving him the snub. Like I don't think she's doing
Hmm.
it. Like I don't think she was manipulating Al. Al just misinterpreted her interest in him.
No, yeah, this is like, I think this is Al not understanding how, or Al's expectations of what being famous will be like, being contrasted with what it's actually like.
But Janice actually admits to having a boyfriend, and this is where Al
Yeah,
is like, "Oh shit, I've been misled," and Al
yeah.
is pissed off again.
Although
Janice walks away.
obviously, you wonder if she was like aware that she was getting, because like there is a scene when right as the DJ says, Marcus has bought out the entire club. You see, I don't know if it's the exact girl, but like a couple girls, they like turn and they're immediately like, oh, pour some more like wine or
Yeah,
whatever, and they're
drink as much
they're
as you can
seemingly trying to
now.
like, yeah, they're seemingly trying to get the last of the alcohol that they can get
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah,
now
that
that they
does.
have the opportunity. And so it definitely paints these people as like kind of just in it for alcohol and
Gold
I
diggers,
guess
as they say.
possibly money if you're getting something out of it, or like Instagram. Like she says at the end, she's like, when he's like, "Hey, can I get your number?" She's like, "Oh, you can follow me on Instagram," which is like,
Yeah,
benefits
brushing
her,
her off.
doesn't so much benefit Al, right?
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good point. It wasn't overt that she was
yeah, it was
manipulating
not
him
overt,
in a
but I
way,
think it
but
was there
there's a
was just
little,
enough.
yeah,
Yeah, there were just enough clues that you can pick up what kind of a person this is,
yeah,
and I think that's and that in combination with the other club members that we see and how they act, I think kind of paints a picture of of how this show regards people who go to the club.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say the exact same thing. It's another just that is there's nothing unique about that to club culture. I mean, I guess any bar that you go to, there's always a dynamic between somebody trying to hit on somebody and whether the other person wants to get reciprocate or just maybe get the free drink from usually it's the
Mm,
guy, but get a free drink from whoever they perceive as a potential suitor. But then like leaving them, they that's a long standing dynamic. It's gone on forever. In fact, I can tell you a story when I was in high school.
yeah.
I don't know if I ever told you this. When I was in high school, I went to the Naval Academy on a football recruiting weekend, and I was only 18 years old, and I was escorted by these sophomores, juniors, seniors at the I don't know they called them what they call them, midshipmen. They had a name for them, but anyway, they were undergraduates at the Naval Academy. These are guys,
Hmm.
they have to wear uniforms when they walk around campus. And they took me out. They're trying to convince me to come down there and play football. They take me to the bar at night after the recruiting
Yeah.
seminars, and we went into the bars. And these women, this is in Maryland, or no, it's Annapolis, Maryland. These women were like all over these guys, and and I was like, wow, this is impressive. They love these guys, and but then I came
Yeah.
to find out that the women were they understood completely that these guys had to be back on base at 12 midnight, and
Yeah.
they were getting as many drinks out of them as they could. The guys would
Huh.
buy them free drinks because they knew they had to leave and go home at 12, and there was no concern on their part at all that anything untoward was going to happen.
Yeah.
So they were being manipulated. It was a little that's my first memory of that
Yeah.
experience, at least from the guy's perspective. But anyway, I don't. That's neither here nor there for this episode. But
Yeah.
take that for what
Interesting
it's worth.
story.
Fatherly advice, as it were. Okay, so where were we? So Al is angry. Ern shows up and tells him what happened with the club owner, which makes Al even more furious. Ern apologizes to Al for not being more threatening. He's like, "I'm not like you. People don't fear me. Whatever." Uh,
Right, yeah, and this is the line where he says like people can tell I drink juice,
yeah,
um, which I get like I'll just say like was something that like the fact that he says like people can tell I drink juice is kind of like a I had recently heard from a black content creator that like the way that being black kind of like what's the word, like impacts like your everyday decisions can like go down to even just like the things that you choose to eat at a dinner table, where like if you're with like a group of your friends and you choose to get lemonade while everybody else chooses to get Coke, like they might give you some weird looks.
yeah,
And like it's those kind of little details that I don't really, as a white person, I don't really think about. And I just like, yeah, I find it really interesting. And I would hope that that kind of like pressure that a lot of black people might feel
mm,
is like going away. uh but
yeah. Fair point. Okay, so at this point, Al gathers up his security guys, and I think this is the first time I realized that there were even such characters in here. I think this is the first time that security guards have appeared, which who are there to take care of Al, or to watch out for him. And they're not characters that we know anything about. It's the first time they've appeared, but they storm into the owner's back office
Hmm.
room demanding the money. And this time Al is very, very much in control. He ends up punching out the owner, roughs him up, throws him on the floor, takes the money. He even slaps him with the money. Uh, and actually, that's what causes him to fall to the floor. And Al and one of the security guards ends up taking beer on their way out the door.
Yeah.
The security guard is like giving him advice, like you need to be a better businessman or something, as they walk out with the guys, not only with the all the cash, but with his beer as well. The owner gets up off the floor, gathers himself, and and this is the most telling line in the whole episode. He
Yeah.
says, "That boy is going to be a star," and
Yep.
and then like makes eye contact with his girlfriend, who's also in the. I assume that's his girlfriend in the room, and
Hmm.
says, "Well, go ahead and call the police then." But that I think this line is really this is the punchline to the whole episode, because
Yeah.
this is
This is what
really
the whole episode's kind of
commentary
building to.
on the club culture, maybe the rap culture in general. Uh, that the club owner, despite the fact that he just got his ass kicked by Paperboy and
Hmm.
got robbed,
He very
essentially.
much recognizes that that's the kind of behavior that will benefit
Yes,
Al.
yeah. So
Yeah.
and I guess in the larger scheme of things, this is again the complicated identity issue. We're led to.
I would say it's that, but it's also it's also very much like a criticism of the culture of music production and like the system that rewards this kind of behavior, right?
Yeah,
Like if if this were if the music industry were concerned with, making sure that people within it are behaving correctly, then this kind of behavior would not slip by. But the music industry is concerned with making people famous, with creating a character that the masses will spend a lot of money on because they're interesting and oh man, like this is a guy who's allegedly shot someone. That's interesting. And then that's the kind of behavior that gets like rewarded. It gets more clicks.
but I don't think
And
the creators aren't pointing a finger at like some sort of industry executive person, because that character
not
does.
an no, not an individual industry executive person, but this club owner is a guy who's very financially motivated, right?
Mhm.
We've established that
But that's
he's
not
willing
a
to
music person. That's a
undermine.
club owner. I mean, he
Well, I think that it's like all a
part
lot of
of
the
it.
same. These are all like big figureheads, the media figureheads who we've seen, and the other people who are higher up in the music industry, and including this guy who, and the club scene in the music industry are very like tangled in with one another. That's where a lot of
Mhm.
artists and will go to socialize, to meet others, to do shows for the public. And then it's also is the kind of setting that they will often sing about. That's like prime area for like interesting experiences to be had that you could put into your art, right? So I think I think that the connection between like this guy is as kind of the club owner, as being somebody who's not really concerned with like whether or not Al is acting morally, I suppose, and more is so concerned of just getting his paycheck. Um,
Yeah, I think they're
and
definitely pointing at the club culture in general, and I don't see as direct a connection to like the industry,
I
but
definitely
I
do.
mean, I think you're right. I mean, they're tied together, but just
I
as
see
far
it
as
as
what
like
was written into this
I see it as
episode,
like a toxic symbiotic relationship, you
okay.
know,
But I
where
mean,
like
we're
they
led to
both feed
believe.
into one another and exemplify the negative aspects of each other.
I mean, just within this episode, though, we're led to believe that the club culture and the rap community, they're propagating the notion that Al is a gangster. I mean, we saw that in previous episodes too, like incorrectly in many
Hmm.
aspects. They thought he actually murdered somebody. So and so they're propagating that. It's benefiting Al, even though Al, as we've seen also, is uncomfortable with that stereotype,
Hmm.
and yet Al behaves like a thug in this scene. So is the culture forcing Al to be something he doesn't want to be, or is
Hmm.
this who he really is? It's a nature or nurture kind of question, right? Is this really who he is,
Yeah,
or
no,
is this?
like I see it personally as like a nurture thing.
Mm,
And I'd also say that when we look at the people who are propagating that idea, we see like the guy in, what was it, episode 2 or something, who gives them the wings, and he's saying, "Oh, you're one of the last real rappers," indicating that he's thinking of an era in the past. And then you compare that to somebody like the Black Justin Bieber, who is also the real life Justin Bieber, who is like, he's an asshole and like a brat and kind of thing, but he's not violent, unlike, I mean, unless provoked, I guess, but like he's much more like a trying to be like a soft boy. He's trying to be like approachable to the media, right?
mhm.
Uh and so I think when we look at like as the older characters are more attached to this like unhealthy image, and the younger characters are moving in a more so like emotionally vulnerable type, I guess you could say, like a healthier direction, regardless of in terms of their art and the persona that they're projecting out onto the rest of the world. And then Al, who's kind of in the middle of that, who grew up and was probably inspired from one, but is now moving into an industry where he's realizing that, like he's as he's matured into an adulthood, and he's seeing how, like, you know, actually getting into gun violence is not a very good thing. And like he doesn't, and like the media is gonna propagate that message even though it's something that he doesn't want. That's like a core question that he now has to grapple with like how he's gonna be seen, and like whether he's gonna try to be successful in the industry as it is, or is he gonna try and like chart his own path and change the industry himself.
So, I mean, I thought it was also notable that there were, I don't think there were any white characters in this uh, episode. If you
Yeah, I don't.
try to
Yeah.
make a connection between like the cause, the nature versus nurture thing, and if you say this is nurture, meaning it's the rap industry, it's the music industry, you could imagine that there's some white guy at the top of that industry who's like
Yeah.
ultimately responsible for the bad behavior that we've seen on both sides of
Yeah, I mean,
Al's
when I
behavior.
say yeah, I mean, like when I say the industry, like the industry is made up of people who are making money off of it, and
But I'm just saying that
you know,
the creators offer no opportunity for you as a viewer to blame this on white culture. I
in
mean,
this particular episode,
right? There's
you know,
previous episodes where we see like
yeah,
people
yeah,
in the
we have to think about it
media
in the
or the
context of the
radio
entire
DJ
show.
guy.
This episode is very much so more so about the people on the ground level, I think.
Yeah, so I wonder how
You know,
much they're pointing the finger at the black community themselves for participating in this.
I definitely no, like yeah, like I said, I think that the way the show sees it is like and I would tend to agree, as like a toxic symbiotic relationship,
Mm.
which in real life is starting to be healed, and in this show I think we're gonna see, uh, Al try to work towards the better, like the better solution.
And you
But
know,
in this particular case, you have the bartender woman who's talking about how, people who are in the club are here because they want to stunt and they want to feel good about themselves, right? And so the type of people who are doing that are people who are on the ground floor, who are living a pretty, probably a not very fortunate life otherwise, and they want to kind of escape, which this is the way, and presenting an image of somebody who's probably more confident and more well off than they actually are, which is what a lot of club culture, I think, tends to be like.
yeah, that's. I mean, maybe
It's all
the
putting
word
on masks.
stunting is the word stunting is new to me.
Stunting is like showing off. You
Yeah,
had it.
I that maybe is just maybe more unique to black vernacular, but
Yeah,
the
I'd say that
behavior
the
you're
particular
describing
term
is
stunt,
true
yeah,
for any
it's hip
any
hop
kind
culture.
of young cultural experience like social media or just going to bars or whatever. Everybody is trying to show off at some level. But I mean, I think going back to the characters themselves. I mean, clearly both Al and Ern say how much they dislike this culture. You know,
Yeah.
F the club,
Yeah,
and
like
this
they
is
like they want.
pointless.
Mhm.
But the notoriety that Paperboy has achieved seems tied to his gangster identity, and this
Yeah,
seems to be
absolutely.
celebrated within the club. So there seems to be an incentive for him to behave this way, and again, according to the creators, it seemed I I I think the creators are saying that incentive is coming from within the black community. I mean, the club owner's final lines of dialogue, I think,
Yeah, I
offer
was
that
gonna say
evidence.
like the club owner guy who's like obviously the representative of like he's not on the ground level. He's making
Mm,
money off of
but
this.
he's like adjacent, like
Yeah, he's adjacent, but he's higher up.
he's not
And
in the
then you
music
have the
industry
media.
per se, but he's part of the culture too, and he's capitalizing on the whole
Okay, well,
culture.
what about Montague from last episode? You know, we made a whole point about how he's basically exercised his blackness out of
Yeah,
him in
and
order
he's
to
he's
become
portrayed as
successful in
sort
the
of
media,
like,
and he's very much trying to push the idea of Paperboy as like as the stereotypical thug, you know?
but he's kind
And
of, I kind of got the sense that he was made out to be a phony of some sort, like, or maybe that's
well, I mean,
accurate.
everybody in this show is a phony. The whole point of this episode is
They're
that
all
people put
acting.
on masks.
Yeah,
That's a huge theme in the entire show is that people are trying to act like these caricatures that don't fully describe them and don't have the nuances of real life human beings because it's profitable, you know? And
I don't think
and
there's anything phony
I
about
feel
the
like,
club
you know,
owner.
to say that profit come that like the source of that profit comes from just one specific type of person like if we were to say that the black or the hip hop community or whatever is like the sole reason why this type of character is profitable. I think that's ignoring the fact that a huge audience of hip hop music is white people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm one of them. I I listen to hip hop music, which has been historically a pretty black genre of music, and you know, I've paid for like album covers and that kind of album art and that kind of thing of these artists that I enjoy who are black, and so like
But you wouldn't
and you know, you go to
celebrate
like
the
you go to
behavior of.
Kanye West concerts and Travis Scott concerts and it's like there's a lot of white people there, you know?
Sure,
So like the audience of this is not just the black community, right? Like
but again,
if it
there's no
were
white
just the
people
black
in that
community, there would
club.
be there would be a so much smaller audience
Yeah, yeah, you're right. But I
and it
mean,
wouldn't be as
with respect
profitable.
to like what the creators were trying to convey here, I mean, they offered no white characters in that episode, and taking it back to what you just said, I mean, you would not support. I mean, I know you would not support or celebrate the behavior of Al in this episode or the
No.
club owner.
No.
Um, Probably not even Earn what the way Earn behaved in this episode, even though he's much closer to your temperament than any of these other characters. But yeah, I mean, it's just like bad behavior coming from many different directions, and you can certainly be a fan of rap music and not behave like these characters in this scene. So I should take
So
back what
then
I
like
just said because I just realized I misspoke that. Uh, the phony the what's this guy's name, Montague. I mean, he
yeah.
was, I think, supposed to be. Uh, I don't think he was phony. His character was trying to act as a actual journalist, and the club owner, he what.
I don't know about that. An actual, you know, the definition of what journalism is has been kind of bastardized, but I assume that what you're talking about when you say journalism is somebody who like a true journalist, right, which is somebody who reports facts and tries to be as objective and non-partial as possible, whereas that's absolutely not what he was doing. He was doing the exact opposite.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah.
was
He
trying to
was.
push a very specific narrative, even
Yeah,
when it
for
was
sure.
clearly not that.
But I'm just saying, as a viewer, were we supposed to think that that's really the way Montague was, uh, or was he like more, yeah, like more like Paperboy, and he's just putting on an act for the sake of his show? Like
I think it's very, I mean, either whether he's
he
like
was
putting
taken
on an
aback
act,
when
like
Al
whether or
called him
not
the
he
N word.
has, whether, yeah, like whether or not he's like, he's actually a thug behind bars or behind closed doors, or whether he just like acts like that completely naturally,
We got
I
no
think is
indication
regardless, because the fact of the
of
matter is
that.
that like it benefits him it benefits him financially to paint Paperboy as a thug and to push that idea,
Yeah.
right?
And then the
And
club owner too. I think I said he was not phony, but he was deceitful and phony, trying to avoid paying Earn. You know, presumably there was some agreement. I don't know if there was a contract, but he was sleazy because he was trying to get out of paying Earn and Paperboy. So, in I mean, in that sense, you know, I think the creators are just saying there is probably a lot of that out there. It probably has nothing to do with being black or white, but they're just club owners that are trying to profit off of the music industry, and that's got to be uh, somewhat realistic.
oh
Uh,
yeah, absolutely. I think that is very realistic.
so I also made a note here questioning whether this whoever wrote this, if this came straight out of Donald Glover's head, if this is any indication of self-loathing in Donald Glover's mind, because he's participating in this too. Like, you know, does he hate himself for having to participating in this to make a living? Uh,
Well, I think if we are to take what the bartender says to him, um, at you know, as she tells him, you know, she says that you're no different from everybody else. Everybody, if you're at the club, it's because you want to be at the club, and you know what you're doing for your work is effectively what these people are doing, where he's trying to stunt and feel good about himself by being the manager of a popular music artist, right? And so she's making the point that like him doing that is definitely a way to get like that career choice as opposed to what he was doing prior, which seemed to be like just kind of meandering between jobs, uh you know, despite having
mm-hmm.
a decent you know, a pretty solid education, he like for whatever reason has like, you know, we know Ern is an intelligent guy and he seems to have the tools to get a higher paying job, but he chose music in this really volatile industry. And because I think we're supposed to get that it's because he has too much pride, you know, like he doesn't want to, he's not willing to sell his soul to like make money. He wants to do something that will get him fame and recognition. Maybe not so much fame, but like he wants to do something that he feels is a job that will be respected by people.
Yeah,
You know, like, oh, you're not just a cog in the machine. You're charting your own way, and you're helping to create music that is relevant to that, like, you know, that ground level people will enjoy. You know, you're not just being an airplane like whatever he was like selling at like the beginning of episode
yeah,
1
insurance or
or
something.
whatever. Like that was obviously an unfulfilling lifestyle to him. And I think that at this point we're supposed to understand that the reason why is because he felt that that was just like too corporate in essence,
Well,
you
you
know.
could see his character do a little double take when the bartender dropped that line on him, like you're just like everybody else. He said no, and they kind of did a double take, and he's like no, no, but he was too drunk to sort of explain himself, and I think, I mean, based on what I see,
I
is
don't know. I mean, I'd say it was probably a combination of that, but I would think like that was also kind of like I feel like if we assume that he actually isn't that he actually is different from everybody else and that he was just too drunk to explain that, then that kind of creates a conflict of interests. I feel like it makes more sense if what the show is saying is that yeah, he is kind of similar to everybody surrounding him and he's drunk enough that he is kind of forced to accept that in this moment because like he can't really formulate a response. He
Yeah.
he like he can't put his guards up at this moment,
But
and
I think, I mean, I think what the viewer sees in total, across all these previous episodes is he's not really stunting. He's not showing off like the other characters are. So he could have, if he had been more sober, his character had been more sober, made an appropriate defense that, yeah, he really is there to work and he's not showing off. I mean, maybe he's trying to put himself forward as a good manager and do his job. And I would argue that that is about as uh, respectable as you're going to get given the industry that he's working in. But I thought that the bartender's analysis was inaccurate of him, given the use of the word stunting. I mean, yes, he's there to do his job, and maybe he is trying to impress people as the manager, but not as a celebrity, certainly.
no,
And
not as a celebrity, but he's involving himself in this
yes,
culture,
yes, correct. I
and
agree.
like that's something that he gets attention out, or I in this particular case, I guess it would be what's the word, like residual
Yeah,
fame, I guess, or fame by association, right?
yeah,
Um, and the fact that he chose that kind of lifestyle over something that's probably more stable, I think is telling about what kind of about like what he values in the work that he does, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I feel I basically just said I feel like the scene is trying to actually be a criticism of Earn. Like we've seen the bartender dropping wisdom bombs cliche in like a lot of shows and movies before, and like it's done because it's like the reason why it's such a like useful shorthand for a lot of shows and movies and just other media properties is that when people are drunk, they tend to like they have their guards down and they can't and they kind of like they kind of just like act on your inhibitions are loose, and you tend to be a lot more like I don't know if like
honest.
true to yourself is the right term to use, but people are a lot more like upfront about their emotions, and they don't really getting drunk takes the mask off
Yeah, yeah.
basically, right? And that's the whole like this whole episode has been about people who are putting on a mask, and now Earn, who is not acclimated to the club culture, is like, and he says like, oh, I hate shots, and now like the mask is coming off, and the bartender is criticizing what she sees under that mask. And because your guards are down, you can't really refute it. You can't say, oh well, XYZ. And bartenders are people who interact with hundreds of people every day. It's their job. So like that's another reason where it's like, oh well, they tend to be like trustworthy sources of of like armchair psychoanalysis, right? Like
I think
that's
I think this in general, just to summarize that, to me, it's primarily a straightforward criticism of the club culture, and Ern's character is still struggling with some aspects of his identity, but uh, they're clearly saying they don't like this business that they have to participate in. All right, so let's go to the last scene. So, or the last two scenes outside the club, Ern and Al are yucking it up about the latest events, and we've seen this before too. They get into some difficult situation or dangerous situation, and then like afterwards, they're like, "Wow, that was so cool," or there was something
mm-hmm.
funny about it. Uh, they're seemingly unconcerned about the fact that the club owner has called the police, or unaware that the club owner has called the police on them, and they seem pretty much justified in what they did. Even though it could be characterized as a robbery, but Ern is now got the munchies. He says he wants waffles and chicken sausage, and then we hear an argument break out off screen. Shots are fired. People start running all over the place, and a car or motorcycle speeds by, and you see bodies flying through the air. And just as a side note here, I rewatched that scene like and tried to stop it, and somebody was doing some nice gymnastic stunts there, because if you slow that down or try to slow it down and watch it again, it looks it looks like there was an actual gymnast there doing a flip, which was just kind of
Hmm.
sidebar. But yeah, somebody was shot and killed in that scene, and everybody scrambles, runs away. In the final scene, we see the three guys sitting at the diner, and Darius is trying to get information about what happened outside the club and whether Marcus was involved. And then the conversation is interrupted by a TV news account of the shooting, and the news reporter is saying that Paperboy was at the club and he's wanted, and he's wanted for questioning by the police regarding the shooting, and that there was also a robbery inside of the club. So their sort of fun conversation was sort of interrupted, and Al just looks sort of like, shit, fuck the club, is what he says at the very end, his last statement.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just puts a point on, puts a cap on the whole episode, like their dislike of the club culture. So that's where we're left, and it's just I think, that's, as I said already, that's I think the primary point of this episode. And even though this final scene is just kind of an afterthought, nothing ever really comes of this shooting. We're led to believe, not to give anything away, but they don't get in trouble. Al or any of them, any of the three main characters, don't get in any kind of trouble from whatever happened outside of the club there. But yeah, we're left with just Al dropping the F-bomb again about the club. So I think the climax though was the line that the club owner dropped, about this boy is going to be a star. And,
Yep.
This last scene was just kind of an afterthought. So I don't know if you have any other analysis. I think this was not my favorite episode of all, and I had to.
Yeah, this episode is like, I think it's a result of that. This one is like 25 minutes, and I think most of the episodes prior to this have been like 22 minutes.
It's a little bit longer.
It does feel like it's, I don't know, a little slower, but it does ramp up at the end. It's got this, yeah, this episode has one of the most like palpable senses of like momentum. I guess it like really does ramp up as it goes.
Yeah.
And the last 5 minutes of the episode I think are excellent, and everything building up to that point, especially on a rewatch where I'm kind of reading in information about these characters that I feel like I have been reading in like kind of the entire time. I think on a first watch, this would be the point in the show where, like, if you don't understand what's going on with Al, what his like internal like main struggle of this season is, and same with Ern, and like you're just not paying attention.
Yeah. I think not as much comedy in this one as in past ones, but it's hard to.
No, but I think the comedy that's
in,
there is very funny.
Yeah, there's a couple.
As always. I mean, like I said, last episode BAN was just like excellent on all fronts in my opinion.
Yeah,
and it was definitely like probably the funniest single episode in the entire show.
Agreed.
So I don't know, maybe some of it is just like coming down from that high.
I think you're right. Yep, that's exactly what I thought too. And the social commentary here, was pretty focused on this club culture thing. So not as much explicitly about race, but again, I did recognize a few more like identity confusion things that came back. But that's all I have for this one. I think we got to over an hour again, even though we keep telling ourselves we're going to try to keep it more concise. But I think we were pretty accurate with the analysis, and got some good dialogue going between the two of us.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'll close this out as always. Thank you guys so much for watching. if you enjoyed, drop a like. It's not just a meaningless gesture. It really does give us a little boost in the algorithm. If you really liked it, we'd appreciate sharing these around, obviously. Until we hit 1,000 subs, we cannot monetize these, so we're really hoping to get to that number as soon as we can. And if you really, really enjoyed it and you want to get some of those bonus perks, then Patreon is right there. I already explained all that in the beginning of the episode. And with that, I think we're going to close out for today. Thanks again for watching,
Thanks,
and
everybody.
we'll see you next time.
Bye.